So welcome once again to our third episode. Oh, we're already in the third episode of Purpose, Profit in Africa. And I'm excited once again to see each one of you. And thank you for those who've continued to subscribe and patronize. And I look forward to seeing more and more of you and more leaders. Now, once again, my name is Anne Wagaki, the CEO and founder, ECG, a management consulting firm, but also a leader in Africa. And today, we're talking about leading in the African market. Now, why is this important? The thing with leadership is that everything falls and rises on leadership. Because the success of any country, the success of any continent, the success of any business, the success of any home lies on the leadership. So that's why this is very critical for me and for each one of us to talk about leadership and what it means to lead in an environment that's characterized by uncertainty, volatility, ambiguity, and everything VUCA. So today we delve deep into what it really means to lead in this market and what is expected of African leaders moving forward. Now, over time, I have met a lot of leaders in the African market. From Kenya, from Nigeria, I've interacted with leaders from South Africa, from Namibia, from Ghana, from every part of this continent, and even beyond, just for comparison purposes. Now, every time I sit with an African leader, I have one in Namibia that I talk to from time to time, and she keeps telling me, leading here in Africa is something else. You could almost lose your mind because the environment is not friendly by itself. As I said, it's very uncertain. But also there are no systems, even the systems expected to be set by the government and our institutions that should support leaders. So a leader in the African market is not just a CEO. Now, this leader is an employer. This leader is a mentor. This leader is a coach, a problem solver, and in fact, a village hero. In fact, most times, these people are the most sought for people in our villages. If there is any contributions that ought to be made, this is the person the village relies on. So they carry a heavy burden. And you become a leader, not just in your business, but the expectations are even higher from your community. And that's just how Africa is or is built. And so a leader in the African market carries so much on their shoulders so that if they burn out, the business collapses. And so it's very important that we talk about leadership and how we can structure this leadership so that it sees the business move on from one level to the other, as discussed in our previous episode. Now, I love John C. Maxwell, and I listen to him a lot. I read a lot of his books. And one of the key books I have read over time and read and reread is The 5 Levels of Leadership. Now, he talks about the different levels that a leader goes through. From position level, which he says is the lowest level, that you've just received a position as a leader. It's the lowest level of leadership. Then we have permission level. This is where you build trust with your people that indeed they accept that you can be their leader. Then he talks about the 3rd level, performance level, production level. This is where you're able to also generate performance from your teams. So after building the trust, you're also able to balance out that with performance from your team. But I love the 4th level, which is people development. And that is partly what I want us to discuss in this episode today. Now, this level is about developing other leaders. Because if we are to talk about transitioning businesses, if we are to talk about generation of businesses, then we'd have to talk about leadership. Because really, everything, once again, falls and rises on leadership. So if we have weak leaders or no leaders at all in our businesses, then they are likely not to move on to the next level. And sometimes all we have in our businesses are managers. Now, there's a difference between managers and leaders. And so leaders carry the vision. And if you're able to develop more leaders who could carry the vision to the next level, then that is how success looks like for a business. So when you talk about people development, it comes with its own challenges, having given the context of the African markets. That finding people who can carry the founder's vision or the business purpose and vision from one generation to the other is not an easy task. But really, that's one of the biggest tasks you have as a leader, developing other leaders. That's the only way you free up your time to think of other strategic matters, to allow the business to become. Otherwise, leaders who continue holding everything, and centralizing leadership to themselves holds the business hostage because the business cannot outgrow them. And any business really is as good as its leadership team. So if you're holding the business hostage, not allowing other people with their diverse skills, with their diverse understanding, their other leadership styles to come in and bring in all this diversity into the building and allow it to grow, then we're missing it. Now, most African businesses do not fail due to bad ideas. In fact, I'm almost so amazed by the excellent ideas I hear from founders and entrepreneurs in Africa. Oh, I must give it to them. African leaders, they have excellent ideas with no doubt at all. But then most businesses fail because leadership is so centralized, it's so emotional, it's so unsustainable. It revolves around one person. So the one person makes all decisions. Everything falls and rises on him or her. And so that holds the business fully captive. And now it's time to move from the heroism or the hero leadership to institutional leadership. That's one of the mindset shifts that we have to consider as African leaders. If we're to really build businesses that last, this is the time to begin building the leaders we want to see tomorrow, or the future leaders, or the next generation of leaders. And so building other leaders has to be a priority for every business. Whether it's your children, or it's just other leaders who are employed in the business or who work in the business, but we have to prioritize building other leaders. Because that's what success looks like in leadership. Now, good leaders develop followers, but great leaders develop leaders. That's the difference. And so we have to shift from just creating or building followers to building other leaders who can run with different functions, who can run with the business and move it from one generation to the other. And one of the areas is the transition from hero leadership to institutional leadership. Now, hero leadership says, I'm the sole decision maker. Everything falls and rises on me. But then institutional leadership says, we are building systems so that decision-making is more decentralized and more people can be part of this business. They're not just employees, but they become partners in the business. And that's exactly what will get us from the situation we are in as Africans. that our businesses continue to die off with the initial founder. That was our discussion in episode 2. If you're yet to watch that, then you need to go back there, because we continue losing our businesses. And those that do not die off are bought off by sometimes people who have, who do not carry the initial purpose that we had. And why? Because we didn't develop leaders who can take up these businesses to the next level. What we had are probably managers or just followers. And so this is the time to really consider what leadership truly means for Africa. And not just in our businesses. When I look at it, I see it broadly. Even in our governments and political spaces. It's time to think through deliberate building of other leaders and be more intentional in building other leaders who can take even our countries to the next level. I've seen most of our African leaders are very keen on holding onto their positions during their tenures. But that's it. But what good will it be for the country if we leave it to other people who might not take it to, where we would want to see this country? And that applies to every other country in the African market. Because real success would be seeing leaders carry the vision forward or take the country or business to the next level. So I think it's time to be more intentional about continuity, whether at a corporate level, as a country, or as businesses, because that is where the change really is. That's where transformation really is. So as a leader, I'll pause by first asking, are you building any leader in your business? And no, it does not begin when you no longer have the energy or when you're about to exit. It begins early, because that's what intentional leadership looks like. And so as an intentional leader, are you beginning to build leaders? Are you building other people to take up that business or to take that business to the next level? Now, the other key thing that we have to talk about is the shift from ownership to stewardship. Now, I've spoken to one of the great leaders in this country, and hopefully we'll be hosting him in this show very soon. Now, one of the game changers for him, and I asked, what has seen this business grow to the levels it's at? Or what has seen it transition so seamlessly to the next level and the next generation, and keeps growing? Now, one of the things he told me was that immediately he started off running his business, he realized that he's not just the owner of that business. He's actually a steward in that business. What does stewardship mean? So it means taking care of what has been entrusted to you in a responsible and sustainable way. So sustainable in this case means that it's long term. Mean that whatever you're doing will continue into the future and it will still hold. It will not break down. That's what stewardship is about. It's about today, but it's also about the future. Because what good is it to be successful today, to run a successful venture, to run a successful business today that ends up failing in the future? Where is the legacy there? What good is it to have a country run successfully during your tenure, but then we have no people to take up that vision to the next level? So soon as you leave office, then everything collapses and we go back to normal. What good is it? And so we have to shift our minds from just ownership to stewardship. Because you as a leader, you're not only a business owner or a leader, you're actually a steward. You've been entrusted with that vision. So how well you run that vision will determine how successful you are, and will determine what we talk about as your legacy. And that includes building people. Because it's an expectation that if you're a leader, then you're also building for the next generation. Because remember, we just said sustainable. So can move into the future. So I'm calling each of us as leaders to not only see whatever we're running, whether it's a position you have, whether you're employed, whether you are a founder, to not only see it as just a position or just own it or be happy with just succeeding during your tenure. That is good. That feels good. But it is even better if that success can last. If we can see it into the future. If we can see it run through other people. Imagine, some of the most successful leaders that we talk about today are leaders who actually got to do what was right during their tenure. We celebrate them. But even better, if they built leaders who have carried their legacy over the years. Now that is success. And so as we look at the African market, it's time for us to relook into how we approach leadership so that it's not just management we're doing, because most of us are just managers. We're just busy managing functions, managing departments, managing people, managing followers. Very few of us have stepped into leadership, and real leadership for that matter. And I still recommend the book by John C. Maxwell, The 5 Levels of Leadership. And I hope to see more leaders get into the pinnacle level. I've been a leader myself in this country for many years. It's interesting that immediately I left my campus, I got into a leadership position. And so I've been a leader, I believe, for the period I have been in the industry or the working space. And so I have seen what it means to do all the work. You know, that heroism mentality, where we imagine because you get credit for this as a leader, then that's what success looks like. But really, success is seeing people that you have built become, and sometimes even become better than yourself. That's what real success is about as a leader. So more and more founders, if we're to have this discussion on continuity, then there are things that are not negotiable. And one of them is building other leaders. Because these are the people to carry your legacy to the next level. These are the people to carry your vision, the purpose, the values to the next level. Now, the thing with leadership is that we can't talk about team leadership before we talk about self-leadership. It begins from leading self. Because if you're still having identity issues, you're still having capacity issues, then it's very difficult to bring out even better teams. And so it's very critical that as leaders, you build capacity intentionally. Let's not just settle for average. And imagine because you got to this position, then you're already good enough, because you're the founder, you do not care about capacity building. After all, you're not looking for any job. Continuously build capacity around you. Because what happens, as I said, is that everything falls and rises on leadership. And any organization is as good as its leader or leaders. So if you're mediocre, unfortunately, then your people also become mediocre. So you're holding the business hostage, but also the people under you hostage. So it's very critical that you self-develop yourself. Now, when you talk about succession is not an event. Succession is not something we just wake up to one morning and say that we are doing succession today. It begins from mentorship, continuous mentorship. It begins from training your people. It begins from coaching. So it's a continuous thing. So when I talk about preparing the next generation of leaders, it's not a one-time event. It's a continuous thing. It has to be intentional. It has to be deliberate. It has to be something that we're doing through our daily activities, that we are building the next generation of leaders. One last thing that I would want to mention is that long-term thinking is a competitive advantage. And I want to pause for a minute for us to just sink that in. That long-term thinking is a competitive advantage. Now, building leaders is a long-term strategy because it means that this business has a future. So I hope to see more leaders who are interested in long-term mentality, who are interested in future businesses, who are interested in seeing the businesses and visions move from one generation to the other. And it begins by building people, because you cannot do it alone. If you want to go further, then you go with people. So carry people along, and not anyone. Build the right people and the right leaders. Now, the Africa we talk about tomorrow depends on the leadership we practice today. If you're yet to subscribe, this is your moment to do that, and see you in episode 4.